it's getting started with Teams, and want to just do a shout out to our sponsors, because without them, this wouldn't be possible. We wouldn't be able to bring this to you. Just want to say thank you. So my background is I've been in the technology space for actually in excess of 20 years, but my background is really SharePoint. I have usually tell people I've been involved with SharePoint since it was SharePoint, because I got involved with what was the Tahoe beta for the first version SharePoint 2001, and I've really been pretty much involved with it all along. And as the platform and now evolved from on-premise to cloud to and now to essentially with the Teams coming into it, I've stayed involved with it and moved along. So, for many years, I ran a Microsoft Gold Certified Partner out of the Philadelphia area, and I ran the Philadelphia SharePoint User Group for, I don't even remember how many years it is now, 7 or 8 years. And, was very involved with that community. I've done a lot of SharePoint Saturday type and SharePoint conference speaker type events. Written some books, and about 5 years ago, I kind of made the transition from going to an office all the time to really working from home and doing a lot more remote work, because I had clients that are really located all over the world. So, as horrible as things are with what's going on right now from a work perspective for me, it really hasn't made that much of a difference. I'm still in that, remote virtual relationship that I have with companies. So it's doable. It's something that I know everybody's adjusting to. The technology has gotten so much better and all now with Teams that it makes it even easier, but we'll all adjust with it. So I wanted to just kind of start off with a little bit of a story about Teams. And I got called into a company that I was recently working with, and it was a new client for me. And they told me that they had a lot of different solutions that were in place, but that they were trying to get their users to use Teams, and they really weren't picking up with it. And they wanted to kind of find out what other type of training was available and just how to really kind of get them started. So when I went in, they had a lot of they actually had about, I forget, it was about 50 or 75 teams that had already been created. And, based on what they had told me, I was kind of surprised that they had that much, because they were saying that it wasn't really getting this level of usage that they thought initially that it should be. So, I had kind of met with their leadership team and was getting information from them. But then after that meeting, I kind of started to take a walk around the company, and in this case, it was a company that was local to me, but had also spoken with some of the other users, and just kind of to get a sense of, if they were using it, how they were using it, what they were doing with it, and just get some feedback from them. And despite the leadership team had initially told me, oh yeah, we had trained all of our users, what I found out was, in talking with the end users, was that yes, they had received some training, webinar style training, but really it was on the functions and features of Teams. And while they thought that was nice, it really didn't help answer questions for them as to, they already had things like file servers in place. They had SharePoint in place. They've had other third-party file storage solutions and web conferencing systems in place. They never answered the question as to when is Teams appropriate, and, why should I be using Teams? So, as I started having those conversations and actually getting that feedback from those users, I went back to the leadership team and, kind of started taking a look at the sites that they had created. And all of the sites that they had created were all based on a departmental structure. So it was very generic. It was things like marketing and HR. And there was no real purpose behind each of those sites. And they're generic folders essentially that were put up there, so they were never integrated into the actual business process. So this is why the users were having a tough time with when do I put a file into Teams versus putting it in SharePoint or putting it somewhere else, because nobody had actually built that picture for them. So that day and for the next couple of days working with them, we sat down and really kind of mapped out a couple key business processes for them, things that we could tackle early in the process, that were not, in other words, we weren't trying to boil the ocean and rework everything. We identified a couple key processes that we were able to quickly move into Teams, and things like document reviews or easy approval, and basically be able to do that. So essentially, we sat down and I went through that process of outlining how that would work inside of Teams, and built that out very rapidly in an agile style, and did some quick training with their users, and inside of a couple of days we were basically able to start moving them over and get them to start actually using Teams, because we tied it to the business process. They could then see the purpose. They understood where to store their documents. So anyway, it was a success story around Teams and how it now served the business problem. And as you saw with what Mike's conversation was earlier, how the hospitals and the healthcare system is using Teams to fulfill certain needs, and it's a rapid way of meeting needs within your environment. So just a quick story for you. So I mentioned, let's do a level set. So what I'm actually going to do at this point is, instead of getting into a lot of slides, I want to switch over, and I'm just going to jump into Teams and walk through Teams. And as I mentioned, some of it's going to be repetitive, but let me switch over my sharing here so that you can see. So at this point, so what I wanted to just do again is I'm actually in the web client here, using Edge as my browser, but just to kind of walk through some of the areas here. We have activities on the left side, which is any type of activities that are happening in the system that you're involved with. You can see those activities over here, so you get a full feed of the activities. You have chat, which is both group chats and one-on-one chats. We have teams and channels, which is locations for storing and sharing information with members of your team. We have a capability for private channels that I'll talk to also. We have our calendars and meetings for our video, audio conferencing around it. We also have a calling capability, so that if you have a calling plan connected in, you can basically route all your calls through this and connect that way. We have our files down here on the left-hand side, and we also have this ellipse here, which shows different other types of applications that we're in here. So just kind of, let's jump back up to our activities, which is really typically where I start my day. And I'm actually logged into this environment as Megan. So if I want to see, anything that's going on for Megan, I can do a quick search, and it comes back with all the app mentions that where individuals had mentioned me for something in here. So if I want to, I kind of use this as a way to start my day and create a to-do list for myself, as to know who I need to get back to. So it helps me prioritize different tasks, essentially. So start there with that feed. I also have my chats over here, and I can have an individual chat. I can start a chat with just a one-on-one chat with somebody that is internal, and just start by typing their name in the two, and it gives me a list of any users that'll match, and I can then select that and basically add my chat, and I can do real rich text formatting of this. You can add attachments into your chats. You've got emojis and GIFs and all that you can add into your chats, and I'll show you more of these as we go through. But one of the things that I like best about the chat capability is to be able to chat with external people, so that you have more of a real-time collaboration, conversation experience with it. So I'm going to just enter my own external address in here, and essentially what it'll do is it'll go out and it finds it and it adds that in. Now you can see I actually had a chat in here as a test before, but we'll just do welcome to Teams Day. And I'm not sure if you'll actually be able to hear this, but that's if you heard that beep, that's the chat coming in on my mobile. So I just got that response or that message from Megan, and I'll just real quick do a response back here from my mobile and just enter that message, and that'll come back. You see how quick that is. So right there, so it's basically instantaneous and all. So you have that chat, and it's both for, as we go into channels, you'll see the group chats for within there, but they can be one-on-one chats or group chats up here. You can have multiple people involved in this. Just while we're here, you can see that you have these different capabilities to like something, love it, other emoji icons essentially. But off of here, one of the things that I want to show you too is there's two pieces. There's a couple things I want to show you here. One, you can save this message. If it's something that you want to be able to go back to and refer to in the future, you can select that, and then up on your profile up here in the right corner, you'll have your saved items, and by selecting that, you would see anything that's saved there. So also, and I'll walk through the different ones, you can certainly mark it as unread, but you can take a whole thread and share it to Outlook, and it'll open an Outlook message for you, and then you can send that. So sometimes, if you have somebody that's it's not on Teams that you need to be able to communicate with, you can basically open a conversation, maybe it's a customer or something, and you had an internal conversation about something, and you want to share that with your customer. So you can use the share to Outlook, and it'll basically create that email message and send that over to them. And I want to show you, I'll show you when we get to that section about a capability to translate. So if you're if you have another part of your company is in China, and they're writing everything, their chats and all are in Chinese, they're basically doing that, and you're getting those messages. Well, you can then do inline translation of those so that it's translated so that you can then respond back in English, and they'll see it on their end in whatever language they had typed it in. So that's some of the chat capabilities there. If you've started a chat already and you want to then take it into a video call or a audio call, you can do that right from these upper icons right here. I want to show you the search here too. So you can go up and just type, reports as an example, and when you do that, you're going to basically get back a list of any teams or channels that match the word that you searched for. If you wanted to go beyond that, you basically just hit enter. And now down on the side here, you get any type of activity showing up that where a report is mentioned in it. And you can see it's like highlighted there essentially for you. So that then you can then open up that item, and it takes you right to a conversation, and you have this whole thread conversation here. And we'll just go up here, and just as an example, we'll now go and we'll say, let's share this to Outlook, and it'll open up an Outlook message for us here. and it basically puts that whole thread into the Outlook message that of the conversation that occurred. So then you can just, I'm just going to send it to Lee in this case, and you can send that email. So it carries that whole conversation over with all the details around that. So that's some of the searching capabilities and all across it. You can also see any people that match the word that you're searching, or any documents that match it, files that are in there also. So that's the search capability. And so let's go into our teams here. I want to take you through some of the different teams that I have created and that I typically use to kind of help give you some structure around this. So this is a demo environment that I'm using, but I've also created a couple things in here that I just want to kind of walk you through. So in terms of getting started with Teams, one of the things that I find is a great way to get started is you typically have your IT department involved in this. You'll have a business sponsor, and you'll have some initial your champions that are getting involved with the deployment of Teams. So Microsoft actually has this capability inside of the Teams Administration Center. It's called Service Advisor. And when you deploy Service Advisor into your Teams, it creates an actual team for you called Deployment Team. And it goes through and it creates, you have a choice of the channels that you want to create. So the Service Advisor creates a chat, Teams, channels, and apps, because those are the workloads that are commonly associated. And then it also will create a meetings and conferencing channel that are each separate. And I'm going to walk in through those. And those are, two workload specific items. But in my own experience, I've found that there's other areas that companies need when they're deploying Teams that really wasn't covered inside of those two channels that are workload specific. So, one being awareness and adoption, business engagement, early adopters, feedback, a roadmap. And this isn't a Microsoft Teams roadmap. This is the roadmap of Teams inside of your company. And you can basically share and track information inside of that so that you're communicating and helps everybody being on that same page, as well as other ones that I've used: the security and compliance, the service health incidents, strategy and planning, and training. And that's the way I've set up this. So I basically took what Microsoft gave, I'm leveraging that, but then I've expanded that with additional channels based on areas that are important when you're getting started with Teams and doing your initial deployment of Teams. So what I want to show you though here is, let's jump into this chat, Teams, channels, and apps. And this is what you'll get with us. So you get your normal posts and all with this. You have your files and wiki tabs that are standard, but you also have a planner tab here. And this is what, there's a lot of value in this right here, because it basically steps you through doing a deployment. So you have your planner, and with the different items that are associated with it. But then as you look through, you not only have the tasks, but you have individual checklists of items that need to be completed associated with it, as well as a description of everything that needs to be done as part of that. And you can go in here and basically say, okay, this is done, and then do an update of it. But you can also, it also comes with a set of default like links to Microsoft resources to help you do your deployment. Some are PDF files, or this is a video, this is a link to the site. There's other ones that have documents in them, and you have essentially a whole deployment plan here for these workloads that you can basically reference. And as you see, based on, who it's appropriate for. It has, it's color coded. Is it a project management or adoption related? Is it operations related? And you have those capabilities here. So the same applies with the meeting and conferencing channel that's there. There is a planner in there that gives you all of that worked out. And you have charts in your schedule and all for this. So this is your planner board that we're looking at here. The other thing they provide as part of this is a form, and this is a user satisfaction form. And it's built with Microsoft Forms, but it's got a rich look to it. And you can use this to gather feedback from your users. So, the number of stars that they gave it, they can basically, what's their overall experience. So it helps you start collecting information from them as to, what their experience with it is, what's important to them, how likely are they to recommend it. And of course, these can be enhanced with any additional questions that you may have for your users. So it gives them gives you a great way to get started with your deployment team. Okay, so that's kind of the first team that I start with. The second one that I usually start with is actually this getting to know teams. And I start putting that together, and you can see the channels that I just have with that. And it's basically ideas for future teams, it's success stories, and it's support. So this is a way to just start building information that you can give for training for your end users. But I usually start with it initially because it's relevant for your champions also, which is actually the next team that I create. And I just create this teamwork champions, and within that basically start developing content around best practices, training, and how to. There's a champions corner for just sharing additional information, any feedback and support items. And channels are there to just allow you to organize your information inside of your team. Private channels, you can actually go through at the next level, and you can secure a channel so that it's only accessible to a subset of the members of your team. So if you had a couple leaders in the team, you can create a channel and mark it as a private channel, giving only your two managers access to it as opposed to the entire team. And again, it's a way of just kind of securing information, but that's there. One of the things that I want to mention as part of this before I go on with it is Microsoft also has lack of a better word right now, is it's called Learning Pathways. And if you haven't used that, it's something that you can have deployed by your administrator, whoever's global admin on your Office 365 tenant. They can deploy learning pathways into your tenant. And what that is that's essentially all Microsoft video-based training. Think of it as a learning management solution. It's not a full feature learning management solution, but it gives you a lot of the capabilities. And what is there is training for all the Office applications, all the and Teams specifically. So it's all end user driven, and it's a great way to get started. And that's one of the things definitely to look into is learning pathways. And a lot of times what I will do is I will, from inside of my champions team, I'll basically create a tab that loads learning pathways. So then they can go in there and start doing their training and becoming more familiar with Teams right inside of Teams. And what I like about that, and Mike kind of referenced this earlier, is you have a single place that they're working in to go do all of their work. So, okay, I've created this channel or this team for Teamwork Champions, but inside of my best practices and training, I can go in here and I'll just pull this up. We could actually create a tab on here, and for learning pathways, basically use this website tab. And I'll show you one in a little bit, but I don't have learning pathways in this tenant. So, but you would basically use the website tab to load the learning pathways application. so that it would have that as a tab inside of this channel. Okay, so that's the third one that I typically recommend companies create. And then I also recommend that companies create essentially an all company channel. So, it's a place that for your entire team, one company, one team, to basically share information like announcements and to different types of virtual coffee meetups or newsletters and all. You can post all of that into these channels. But one of the other ones that I've added into this for companies, and I've seen kind of a little bit of a mixed review for it, but I personally I think it serves a lot of a purpose, is to get your email right inside of Teams. So what you can do is you can actually create a tab that will open your email. So this is Megan's email, and actually here's the email that I replied to when she sent that test for me earlier. So Megan can now get her email inside of Teams, and she doesn't need to leave Teams. So it's not fully integrated Outlook inside of Teams, but you can get all of your email messages here. I mean, here's your messages. You can see your message as you open it. You got all your folders here. You can jump over to your calendar, see your calendar and meetings that are on there. You can also, pull up. You're able to pull up your contacts and all as part of it. So, you can navigate pretty well through this and be able to get to your email and all within and while you're staying inside of Teams. And there's just a lot of times that I just want to be able to just see a message real quick or do something real quick. I don't need full feature capabilities of Outlook. I want to be able, the speed of access is more important to me. Instead of jumping over to Outlook or opening Outlook, I've got everything right there. And so that's something that everybody can basically, within your company, when they go to that, the way this works is that it will open up their email. You don't have to worry about it opening up somebody else's email. Whoever's logged in is the email that you're going to get access to at that point. So it's one way of using tabs. So, but this channel for announcements, it's just a way to, again, take things that are you may be sending a lot of emails today, adding attachments to them that are company announcements and just sending it out through email. You can basically put that in here inside of your team. All of your employees are a member of this team, and they would basically be notified of any new updates or posts in there. But then you can have all your conversations around it. You have your capability to start your meetings and everything. So it's a company-wide collaboration solution, essentially, or a team set. So let's see, those are kind of the the teams and channels that I typically recommend companies start with as like the first four. From that point, though, it becomes more of a business process conversation, and it's helping understanding what the problems are, the pains that your employees are having with different processes. So, is it very paper-based and you want it to be electronic? Is it email-based and just the communications are slow? But to identify different processes, things like employee onboarding, things like contract management or contract reviews, capital budgeting is another one that's a great example, that where people come together around a specific process, and they're not necessarily within one department. So like capital budgeting as an example, you're going to have people from finance that are involved with that. You may have engineers, you may have plant and manufacturing people that are involved in that, as well as you have your leadership team that's responsible for approvals and all of it, maybe project managers that all need to have access to it. So it goes across all areas of the business, and they become part of that team around that business process, and they work and collaborate together there. So they can have, virtual meetings if they want, conferencing, as well as all their documents and all being stored there. So, that's an example. But what I'm going to do is kind of just jump over into, what I have here is a Mark 8 project team. And specifically, I want to show you these two channels within it. And so we're going to go to the go-to-market plan channel and just kind of do just a real quick walkthrough, because I'm not sure where everybody is with it again. So just doing some level setting. We've basically added some tabs in here. And the first one is the product roadmap for this project. And essentially what this does is this opens up an Excel worksheet. And you have most of the features of Excel available here. You can work right within this. You can collaborate on it. You can tell, who's editing and modifying that document. You can navigate across your different tabs that are inside of that Excel spreadsheet and be able to access that information. So, that's one way of getting access to your Excel files. You can also have PowerPoints, the same deal. You can set them up as a tab. So anything that's specific to your project that, is, in this case, design specifications, you can have that launch right from a tab so that your end users have quick access to it. Product brochure, this is another one that's a PowerPoint file here. But then I have some other ones here, like this, this is a planner. I showed you a little bit of the planner earlier when we looked at the service advisor capabilities. But essentially here, you can define what your different tasks are on this project board. You can look at, this one is highlighting in red because it's behind schedule. You can tell who it's assigned to. So it gives you, if you're using Planner, it gives you quick access to that information and all to be able to see that. All right, so I want to jump over to research and development and kind of go through this a little bit, because this has a couple other things. It does have, as with all your other channels, you have an area for all of your chats that are specific to that channel. So any communications that are going on within that, you have all of your files that are associated with that channel, and you can see you can create folders inside of that, or as well just kind of put any type of files in here, whether they're PowerPoints and all. One of the things I want to show you here is that let's take this one. So this is Contoso quadcopter camera. If I select drop down off of this, there's quite a few pieces of functionality I have here. One, I can just open this. I can open it in Word Online. I can open it in Word, the application. I can just edit it inside of Teams directly, which is what is my favorite way of doing it. But I can copy a link to it. If I need to send somebody a link to this document, I can get that right here. I can make this a tab, which is what I want to show you. So I'm going to come back to that in a second. You can download it, you can delete it, you can pin it to the top. So, so that it's, when you come into the files tab, it's going to be the top one in there. You can rename it, you can open it in SharePoint, you can move it, copy it. And, you can also, for document libraries that have version control turned on, you can check these documents in and out. If we go back up here to just make this a tab, what happens as soon as you do that, it creates the tab up here on the top and opens that document. So there's your document. So now you've given your team members quick access to that if there's a, if that's a high value document that you want everybody to be able to see within there. So you have that there. The other thing you can do is integrate Power BI reports. And Power BI, it's a great tool for visualizing data, and you can see just some of the capabilities here. But you also can create tabs inside of that with different visualizations into your data, be able to filter your data and do that, whatever you're doing inside of your Power BI report, you can basically do inside of Teams here, and you're just exposing it. You're using Teams as the method to surface it up towards your end users. So that's a nice capability to have there. Now, I put this Outlook tab in here again, and I put it here specifically for a reason. So one of the things that I think is on the roadmap for Teams is a more integrated experience with Outlook. And what I would like to see, and my understanding is it's on the roadmap, but I don't know what the time frame is for it, is that basically that if I opened up Outlook like this, that I would be able to see my emails that are specific to this research and development, so that it's anything that's specific to either the team or the channel that I'm working within. But at least, if I'm managing stuff inside of folders, anything, it's like, from here, I can just quickly jump down into a folder that may have the research and development stuff. So you can create a tab for your Outlook anywhere that you feel you need it. So, and the other thing is I put this design ideas, and essentially what this is a SharePoint tab that I created. So what it's doing is it's going out to SharePoint, and this is a list of data that I was tracking inside of SharePoint. So you can add new list items. From here you can edit this. You can open the spreadsheet or this list up in Excel. And you can just from here just open it. If you wanted to get out of Teams for some reason, you can do that. But you have a lot of the capabilities that you're accustomed to with SharePoint right inside of here. So it's not full featured, but you've got a lot of those capabilities there. So companies that have robust SharePoint environments that are putting up Teams and are trying to connect the two, it's a quick, easy way to connect them. All right, so I think that's all of the items that I wanted to walk you through in terms of demonstration. I'm trying to think if there was anything specific that I had. Oh, I know what. So the other one that I find that you want to encourage, incentivize your end users to keep their profile data up to date. A lot of companies just put it inside of Active Directory and then it becomes available. But the more robust that profile is, so if your users are going into either SharePoint or through Teams here and basically updating their profile information, they can modify that and add things like their interests and projects and all that they're working on. And why that's important is one of my favorite apps is this little app. It's called Who app, and I can just right from here. I can basically open this from here, and you can start. It's a bot that you can just start asking some basic questions to. So this is great for companies that are like, have gone through mergers and where one company doesn't really know the employees from the other company, and you're trying to get an understanding of, okay, who does marketing and who does this. So you can go in here and you can say things like, who knows about marketing, and it automatically goes out and does a query, and it returns basically anybody in their profile that matches marketing. So it's a great little tool from that perspective. But you can also do things like, you want to see who is who is the manager of Lee, and what it'll do from there is it'll go out and it says, okay, Patty is Lee's manager. It responds to that, and from here you have your icons up here. You can basically drop down off the ellipse, and one of the things you can do from here is just basically share this back into Outlook. Like I said before, you can also do to save this as a message, and it shows up here. It's basically a bookmark that's created for you that you can go back to that as if you need to see them. But once you have Patty's information here and her contact information, you can start a chat with her. You can send an email to her. You can see where she's at in the organization. You can start a video conference with her or an audio call with her directly from her contact record in here. And the more robust their profiles are, the more the better the results of this application in terms of the responses that it provides. So I just want to show you the organization here. So it just shows you here. So Patty is the president of the company. She's in the executive management role. And it has her contact information. And again, you have those same options of right here. But you can also see who her direct reports are that are part of her team and all as part of that. So that's some of the quick capabilities there. So I mentioned applications. There are a ton of apps that you can add in here. There's some. I think the number's in the hundreds now, but I'll just give you an example. Is just one is like Salesforce. You can actually integrate Salesforce into this, and you can I'm not going to go into this and all, but you have that as an app that you can add to your team. And there's, as I mentioned, there's many different apps. So if you did something like, a search like CRM, you can see all of the different apps that are available that are CRM related. And there's a lot of different things. So if you aren't using apps, it's something, an area for you to look into. Okay. So I've got a couple other things I want to cover with you. So I think that at this point, I am going to actually just quickly jump out and go back to end the demo there and jump back to my slides. So give me a second here. Teams from a perspective of, I started talking about the process and all. It's very much around putting your people first and identifying how they work together, who they communicate with, understanding just how they're working today, what the pains they are that are having, what do they need to be successful, just like document those conversations, watch how they're working, so that then you can basically take that to the next step and take it to really a process perspective. So you now understand who your people are, and the pains that they're having. You can now start with different types of processes. And I really believe that where I've seen the most success with teams is companies that have focused on the process, because it goes across, most processes go across all areas of the business. And I mentioned things like, the employee onboarding, but you got, customer intakes and customer escalations and training registrations, any type of business process, and to address them, chunk them out into small bite-sized parts that where you try and bring on certain communications or certain portions of that process, but basically, that where you're getting a win, and essentially, eventually you'll get that whole process moved over to its own teams. And each time you're becoming more efficient, you're making your employees' life a little better. So, I very much believe in that process focus as part of that. I had just touch on this. I had mentioned about the one company and one vision, one team. So start with that all company, or include that as your part of your starter teams as an all company team, so that you're communicating across your entire company and they have the ability to collaborate across the structures in your company. So create that. Sponsors and champions, typically you're going to have, and this depends a little bit on the size of your company, but typically it's a one-to-one relationship between business sponsors and the champions that are associated with a specific process. But very often in larger companies, you may actually have champions for a single process that live within different business areas. So you may have something like the sales champion for the customer onboarding process, but then you may have the IT champion for that same customer onboarding process, just depending on the size of the company. Smaller companies, it's typically a one-to-one. So get them aligned with your business process, and the champions really are the people that believe in the change, and they're the ones that are going to help you drive that change. So making sure they're all on board with this. And another thing is, in terms of training, really spend a lot of time with your business sponsors in getting them trained so that they understand teams and they understand how it applies to that business process. So this slide here, A Day in the Life, is a series that Microsoft has created to basically help employees or help companies communicate to their employees the benefits of teams and how a worker, in this case, this is a sales worker, sales associate, how she would go about doing that same process inside of teams as she was, previously. There's a whole series of these diagrams, and I think they're excellent for communicating the value and how somebody would work with teams versus how they may have been doing it previously. So there's one for Daria, the remote worker. There's an HR, compliance, sales, finance. There's about a dozen of these that are available, and the URL there is at the bottom, the teamwork tools at azurewebsites.net. The whole package is out there, so highly recommend downloading that and using that with your users, as it helps them to understand the changes and the value of it and how it's going to help them. And then lastly, as part of this, before your end users are going to take this on, they need to understand, they all want one thing: what's in it for me? How's this going to help me? And you got to be able to communicate to them, and they need to see the benefit of using Teams for that process. If you're not seeing it, then you probably, if they're not seeing that value, then you probably need to take a step back and kind of understand why. So we talked about the starter teams. These are the structures for them. Build showcases. Once you get to that process level, they're your showcase sites. They're what's going to help you communicate to the rest of the organization the value of it and the benefits that team's delivering for your organization. So don't try and boil the ocean. Start with your champions, get them up to speed, identify what's low-hanging fruit for your company. Focus on solving small problems, and don't tackle the huge initiatives initially. You'll get there, but focus on delivering value in an agile way, quickly, for both the company and the service advisor. We talked about tabs. We talked about search. We talked about user profiles. We talked about Who app. We talked about Teams mobile app. I guess I touched on it. There is a mobile app for Teams, especially for any like first line field workers. It's a lifesaver, but it's actually very closely tied to the desktop application also. In terms of the experiences are similar, but one of the things that I really like about it is the capability to transfer. You can be on a call on your desktop, and you got to go get the kids at school or something you got to run out of the office. You got to get to your next meeting. You can transfer that call from your desktop onto your mobile phone seamlessly and basically continue going as you're walking across the business campus or wherever you got to get to. So there's a lot of nice features about the mobile app, and I just use it. It's a great selling feature. The employees love that that capability. Shifts is something else, and I'm going to kind of wrap this up, but Shifts is one of the applications inside of Teams that you have access to, and essentially it's the capability for your first line workers to be able to map out shifts and schedules, and so they can see when they need to work, where they need to be, but they also have the capability to swap shifts and things like that, and so it's one of the tools that's also accessible through Teams on the mobile app, so that they can have access to that and helps them work. So promotional videos, create a quick short video early in your process to basically communicate around Teams. Include anything around your showcase sites. Include your champions in the video. Give them the opportunity to talk and communicate what value they're seeing, why they love Teams. Do something in there that basically is going to get their attention, and just keep it short. But people love videos, so something that's a few minutes long, less 5 minutes or less, to get their attention is a great way to get started. The other thing is give your champions a sandbox to play in. Even once you have you're getting your other teams worked out, they should always have a place where they can go test different types of functionality and use it as a way of learning, whether it's new features that Microsoft has rolled out into Teams, or just demonstrating capabilities, checking things out. Give them that place to play where they know they're not going to hurt anything else. You can also schedule boot camps for your teams. I had talked about learning pathways as an application and using that for training, but you can also do more intense type of training with them that gets them up to speed even faster. I always recommend holding monthly user group meetings for them, and you can do this virtually, obviously, with this like we're doing today, but to basically bring that community together inside of your company, let them share stories between each other, let them ask each other questions. They become great resources for each other in terms of providing their own support. And again, it puts your champions up front for your end users. So it's a great way of keeping that team's motivation and enthusiasm going within your company. We talked about the user satisfaction surveys. I'm just going to, on governance, just very quickly, 4 key areas that you want to keep when you get to governance, and there's talks this week that'll go into this in depth, but you want to talk about provisioning and how you provision new teams in your environment. Every organization is different how they need to do that, but you want to cover that. Naming conventions, external access, and expiration of policies for teams are 4 of the key ones. Talked about that. User voice is something that Microsoft provides, that if you have priorities for new functionality, you can go out there, you could submit a request and then vote it up. And there's a lot of stuff out there already. So things like, you see lately with Zoom, the number of, people that you can see on the screen. Microsoft is limited to 4, but that's been, Teams is limited to 4, but that's been voted up. And now Microsoft's responding that and is going to deploy that very, very soon. So use that. And I have a bunch of case studies in here for you. There are videos and stuff and resources that I'll share with you. So they'll all be in the deck and made available to you. So with that, I want to just thank you all for joining us today. I am going to turn turn this over to our next speaker, but I want to say thank you to our sponsors for all their support and efforts in helping us pull this off. I greatly appreciate it. So with that, we'll take a couple minutes and we'll start back up in 4 or 5 minutes. Thank you.